What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, with Judeo-Christian values and real-world first-hand experience. Today we're going to be talking about some really cool options for survival guns. Check out goodshepherdtraining.com while you're listening. I'll plug in the bio and then we'll get into the topic. Who am I? A question we should all ask ourselves. I am, first and foremost, a servant of God, made in His very own image, a follower of Jesus Christ, a simple man called by God to the Great Commission to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Next, a little bit about my background and what God has allowed me to do and blessed me to do in life. Grew up what most would consider very poor in the backwoods of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States, hunting and fishing. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. So a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. Infantry assaultman. After the combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also a veteran of law enforcement. I served with LAPD. I was a sworn peace officer, a cop for LAPD. I worked regular patrol assignments and more specialized assignments. One of those more specialized assignments was warrant service, fugitive recovery. Also had some other law enforcement roles. I am an FBI certified firearms instructor and been certified by another 3-letter government agency in a lot of firearms and training things. I've also been a private contractor, worked in the private sector pertaining to tactics and gunfighting and protecting America from enemies foreign and domestic. I served as the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area. That was our primary mission, to stop active shooters, which sadly are a thing in America today. I've also been blessed to do quite a bit of competition shooting. Started my first formal competitions even before joining the Marine Corps at 17. I had won more shooting competitions than I can remember. I have competed in all manner of disciplines in shooting. I've been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. Like I said, been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. Mentioned hunting. I've hunted to put meat on the table starting when I was a child. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide, hunting and slaying all manner of beast. And I don't apologize for that. Humbled to be the host of 3 podcasts. Simple Man Sermons, Alpha Male Podcast, and Gunfighter Life. Obviously, as things not mentioned, I've been blessed to do many other things. But, again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a believer and follower of the Bible, the Word, Jesus Christ. And I don't apologize for that. With that, let's transition into today's topic. So you heard a little bit about the bio. If you want to thank me for any of that military law enforcement service, and you actually like the podcast, consider scrolling down and just hitting some stars. It's a cheap, easy way to support. Scroll down, hit a like, hit some stars, leave a review if you can. That's a way you can help and not cost you any money. Now let's get into today's topic. We just did a two-parter on the 22 long rifle for survival. I think that's a great choice. Again, it's my runner-up. I think the best choice is a shotgun. And I'm talking mostly the 12-gauge, 20-gauge shotgun when I talk about that. But there are a lot of other really good choices for your go-to survival gun for the end of the world as we know it, man. When the Cubans are invading and you're peeing in your radiator, what gun do you want by your side? But in all seriousness, I don't have to tell you if you've lived through the last couple of years, the world can drastically change and very quickly. And we are called to watch and be ready. And this is one place where the Bible, history, and science all agree. Civilizations collapse. They have life cycles. In those kind of situations, feeding yourself and being able to defend yourself are important. Again, we've talked about the shotgun and the 22. So we're going to move on to some other great options for survival. Some other great survival firearms. So I think the next place I'm going to go with these are a lever action, pretty much straight-walled cartridge gun. The reasons for this are many. I'm going to specify here, if you have any opportunity to get these in stainless steel. We covered that in our maritime guns episode. But stainless steel, especially for a survival scenario, hard times tool. Get stainless if you can get stainless over any kind of blued, in my opinion. Especially if we start doing the things we're going to talk about. I specified straight wall. I'm talking in that my number one pick would be 38 Special, 357 Magnum. My next pick, and in this order, would be 44 Special, 44 Magnum. If you don't know, the cartridges, the guns chambered in those will fire both. Like a 357 mag lever action will fire 38 Special. And a 44 mag lever action will fire 44 Special. And another good choice would be 454 Casull. Now 454 Casull should also be able to fire 45 Long Colt. And then my last choice would be 4570. The reason I specified straight wall cartridges is they are easy to reload. Talking about reloading, if you've never gotten into reloading, they are fairly simple to reload. The other big thing about these is all the ones, even if they weren't designed to be, all the ones we talked about thus far can be reloaded with black powder. Now you're probably not, in a situation like this, going to be able to make smokeless powder. But you can certainly make black powder. It's been done a long time. In fact, I remember hearing about like long hunting expeditions in the pioneer days. They would just go out and find the minerals and make their own black powder. This is a skill you should have now and know how to do now as far as reloading and all that stuff goes. But you can make black powder. I'm not going to tell you how on this podcast because the ATF may not like that. You can also reuse primers and make your own primers, and the brass cases will probably last, especially if you don't go super hot on your loads, probably a couple of generations. So that's a big reason I go here after the shotgun and the 22. People will say the 22 because you can carry a bunch of ammo, and you can, but if you go with one of these, you can make your own ammo. Now, I talked about in the beginning, feeding yourself and defense. Well, all these calibers are great for medium-sized game and stepping down into small game with the right load. I guess I should talk about that. Now, the right load, you're talking about, your 357, your 44 mag, your 454 Casull. You're talking about, for your medium-sized game, either your classic semi-wad cutter, which you can cast yourself, which are fantastic. 180 grain 357 semi-wad cutter or 158 grain semi-wad cutter. That's put a lot of animals in the dirt, and it will continue to put animals in the dirt. And you could scrounge some old wheel weights, throw some old car batteries in a fire, and get the stuff to make those. Or you could just stockpile them now. They are great. Another good choice would be your copper-jacketed soft point rounds. They are great. You can use, for medium-sized game, you can use, hollow point ammunition, but most of that stuff is geared towards those rounds being fired in a handgun And they may overexpand and give you lack of penetration because you're going to get a lot more velocity out of those rifles than you will out of a handgun. But you can still use them. And obviously we specified hunting and defense. You can get those good hollow point loads or those good defensive loads for defense. And the lever action, while it's not a semi-automatic, while it's not an AR-15, it does give you that reasonable rate of fire. You know, a dozen or so rounds of .357 Magnum in a lever action firearm. You know, that's nothing to laugh at. And while it's not going to be giving you hits at 500 meters like you could get with a lot of bottlenecked cartridges, most defensive scenarios, even talking like post-event, are probably going to be inside 150 yards. And these rounds will do fine for that. If it's a really bad scenario and the person is 300 yards away in most environments and they're shooting at you, your goal is survival. Wouldn't it be better to just kind of slip away? Maybe outmaneuver them or regroup your forces. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying these are the best battlefield implements. Of course, there's no Army today fielding lever action .357 Magnums. I'm saying you have to look at more than that if you're talking about a big event scenario. And especially where you may be getting an array of ammunition or making some of your own and saving the premium stuff for a defensive engagement, a manually operated gun like a lever action is a good thing. Is a good thing to have. Some other cool things you can do with these. You don't need a suppressor for these to be quiet. Both the 38 Special and the 44 Special, if you go really heavy and don't get stupid with going too light, you can make really quiet ammunition. That's not illegal. It's not getting around any ATF regulations or anything. It just happens to be really quiet. Think of them as like a giant 22 CB cap, except they're in 44 caliber, and they're plenty powerful enough to do a lot of tasks. So just let that sink in. Loading a really heavy for caliber, say 180 grain lead semi-wad cutter. Even staying within published data but going on the very low end of a pistol powder load, which means that almost all of that powder, if not all of it, will have burned up inside the barrel, and the pressure will have dropped by the time that bullet leaves the barrel. That makes it very quiet. Without a suppressor, without doing anything illegal, without anything like that. And I don't have to tell you how that might be handy in a lot of scenarios. In an urban environment, in a suburban environment, in the wilderness. That can come in pretty handy. So that's another reason I put these towards the top of the list. Now we talked about small game hunting. A reason that I don't have ARs on this list is you're going to shoot doves with, an AR-15. It's just going to blow them to smithereens, or a grouse or anything like that. But you can do this with these guns, like we talked about, similar to the loads we just talked about. You don't have to load them down quite as far, but just a, solid lead projectile. Or your FMJs. 38 Special FMJs are not going to blow the crap out of a grouse. Because they're not so high velocity, they're not going to blow them to smithereens. You could shoot a grouse with a 38 Special, and it would be fine to eat. So those kinds of rounds we're talking about for small game. And if you're talking about really small game, all of these either have a factory configuration you can buy, or you have the ability to reload shot shells. Not as good as like a shotgun shot shell, not even anywhere close to like a good 410 shot shell, but you can load them with shot. In fact, CCI, I believe, still does make a couple of different size shot. So basically you're taking that metallic cartridge, you're shoving a shot capsule on top of it, which most of the ones today I've seen are just little plastic containers. Like, think of it as a baby Tupperware that gets shoved inside the brass case or steel case or aluminum case, and it fires a canister of shot. Now again, these are not as effective as an actual shotgun shell, but they may be effective enough for a thing like a dove or many other small birds, a robin. Things that are not generally hunted today, but you may very well be happy to have those on your campfire if you've only had beans and rice for a week. So for things like that, those little shot shells work great. Now, I specified for this kind of scenario the 4570 last, and I know the 4570 has a lot of fans, but I mean, that round is a buffalo killing round. It is overpower for many things. If somebody is dead, they are not twice as dead if you shoot them with something twice as powerful. I think that the 4570 is superfluous. It's much more power than is needed. That and the ammunition is heavy. It's as heavy or heavier than shotgun ammunition and nowhere near as versatile. Not saying it's a horrible choice, but I put it last on this list. If your plan is to bug out to Yellowstone and live off grid there by the geysers and take, hot baths in them and hunt buffalo, then maybe the 4570 lever action is for you. But I think a good stainless steel lever action in a straight-walled cartridge is a good choice. Now let's talk about another good choice. When we did the 22 episode, I was exclusively talking about 22 long rifles and also shooting 22 shorts and longs out of those for different reasons. But what about the 22 mag? I think the 22 Magnum is a good choice. I don't think it's as good as a 22 long rifle. Obviously, it's better if you're going to use it for defense. There's a lot of different projectile types and weight ranges, and you get a lot more power. If you look at the power of a 22 long rifle, it's quite a big step up to a 22 Magnum. And the ammunition doesn't weigh a lot more. So this is its big advantage. It has probably the best power to weight ratio, if you're looking at it that way, for prepping, for storing ammunition. 22 ammunition, 22 long rifle is light. The heaviest thing about ammunition is generally the lead projectile. You're getting similar bullet weight range in the 22 mag with a longer case. Now the case and the powder doesn't weigh a whole lot more, so you're not adding a lot there, but you're getting quite a big step up in power. So for that reason, it's great. So why does it take a back seat to the 22 long rifle? Well, because it's freaking expensive. I had one and I don't have one anymore because I could literally reload or even buy factory 223 ammunition cheaper than 22 mag. So it doesn't really make sense unless this is going to be like your go-to survival gun. Let's say this is going to be your one long gun. You may want something a little bit more powerful for your one gun than 22 long rifle. Let's say you're mainly a homesteader and you have coyotes to worry about. And you may have a long shot. Let's say you have a homestead and you could have a 200-yard shot on your ranch, on your homestead. Then this is going to be better at that than the 22 long rifle, for sure. And money is not an issue for you. You got plenty of money. You want to stockpile a bunch of ammo. So you want to have, again, gunfighting is not your main thing. You have a homestead. You're a permaculturist, and you have coyotes on your ranch, and you want to take care of those. And you want to have a couple of 50 cal ammo cans that are light enough to carry if you have to bug out, and you want to pack them full of ammo. Again, this would be a good choice because you got a good power to weight ratio. So I think the 22 mag shines in that aspect. 22 mag is notoriously hard to get a good reliable semi-auto in, so I'd probably stick to a bolt action for this proposition or a lever action, like we just talked about. But Savage makes good, affordable stainless steel bolt action 22 mags, and that's not the only one. I'm sure plenty of other companies do. That just comes to mind on today's market. That's a good value. Stepping up from there, the 22 Hornet. The 22 Hornet, I believe, as far as anything except for some kind of crazy Wildcat, is the least powerful center fire rifle you can reload for. You can reload 22 Hornet. And just like we talked about, the 22 mag is quite a big step up from the 22 long rifle. The 22 Hornet is quite a big step up from the 22 mag. And again, you can reload it. And you can load it, especially if you have, I don't even know that anybody ever made a semi-automatic 22 Hornet. You're talking a manually operated proposition, a bolt action, or something akin to that. You can, again, load these down. You could probably load these down with something, I shouldn't even say how, because liability reasons. Look up how to reload if you don't know how to reload. But there's powder choices and options that you can load down. And you could load this down to 22 long rifle, or maybe even less. And again, it would be very quiet. and that has a lot of applications. Unlike the 22 long rifle, it can be reloaded, and you can reload it quite a bit hotter. It can be quite a bit hotter even still than your 22 Magnum. So to get some numbers to this, I pulled out the old Hornady reloading manual. So for a 55 grain bullet, you're looking at 2,400 feet a second. That's no slouch. And then if you're scaling it back to compare it to a 22 long rifle, a 35 grain bullet, which would be a pretty common loading in, I think 36 grains is a pretty common, loading for 22 long rifle. You're looking at 3,100 feet a second. Pretty common for that in the 22 world would be right around 1,000 to 1,200 feet a second. That's maybe 1,300 feet a second, but you're talking over 3K for the 22 Hornet. So it's really a whole different ball game. So, a bolt action, lever action 22 Hornet, that's a pretty intriguing option for survival. My only caveat to this is I would only recommend you going this route if you reload. Ammunition for this is prohibitively expensive. It is not a common round. It's not super uncommon, so if you reload and you're going to store your brass and reuse your brass, once you have, quite a bit of brass saved up, it's not a big deal. The projectiles, the powder, all that stuff is super common as anything, common as components for anything else. And once you have the brass, that's the reloadable part. So not really an issue. But I would not recommend this as an option if you don't reload. But if you do, it's an intriguing option. And again, you could load these down so they're less powerful. You're not going to blow up that. You're not going to blow up that grouse. We talked about it. If you load down a 55 grain FMJ to a velocity that's not going to blow up meat when you hit it, but still kill it. But you want to have your hot, loads, your soft point loads for shooting something a little bit bigger, shall we say. Now, we've done a whole series on shotgun nerd outs. You guys that listen know that the shotgun is my number one pick for go-to end of the world peeing in the radiator scenarios. When the chocolate and peanut butter hits the fan. That's what I want. I want a shotgun because it is so versatile. And most of us think about the 20 gauge and the 12 gauge for that. And those would be also my number one and number two choice respectively. The 12 gauge, the 20 gauge. But another really, really good option, in a lot of cases better option, is the 410. The 410 is a fantastic shotgun. I actually wanted one of those before I bought the 20 gauge, but I'm a shooter and a hunter. I want to use it. The problem is that 20 gauge is cheaper and more available. 410 is hard to find and has been hard to find for a couple of years now, and it's prohibitively expensive. But again, if money is not part of your equation so much, then the 410 is really good. It has less recoil, so you got that. Usually the guns that it comes in are super light and handy. So again, if you're primarily planning on getting your food another way, but you want a tool on you for defense, for hunting, the 410 is a good option. The ammunition is obviously smaller and lighter. That's one of the big drawbacks to shotguns, is the ammunition is so bulky and heavy. Well, the 410 kind of negates that because it's not nearly as bulky and heavy as 12 gauge certainly, and even far less so than 20 gauge. Just next time you're at Walmart or wherever you are that sells ammo, Big 5 or Academy, wherever you are, just grab a box of standard 12 gauge and grab a box of 2.5 inch 410s and see the difference both in size and weight. And all the flexibility we talked about, you get almost all of that in a 410. Now, I talk about, 12 gauge slugs being a go-to for grizzly bear defense, and they are for a lot of professionals. The 410 slug, not so much. But, a 410 Bernanke slug is plenty and has put plenty of deer in the dirt. And I grew up hunting with a 410. So shy of grizzly bears, and if you live east of the Mississippi, that's not really a concern. For defense and defense against people, it's plenty. For medium-sized game, it's plenty. Also, with the advent of the things like the Judge revolvers and the Governors, things like that, there has been a lot more defensive loads developed. Very intriguing loads, like the disc loads that shoot those flat discs, or, I think it is 5 rounds of triple-aught buck, 5 round spheres of triple-aught buck in a 410 shell. That's nothing to sneeze at for defense or for hunting. That medium-sized game, that 150-pound size quarry, somewhere in that range. It's great for that. So I really wouldn't discount the 410, and I love them, and I don't own one. I had one. I gave it to my nephew, and I was very proud and humbled to be able to do that because it was given to me by my uncle, and it was a blessing to be able to restore that, have my nephew restore it and give it to him. And it was really cool when he told me the other day that he was going hunting with it, and I was really humbled by that I got to be a small part of that experience because he lives on the East Coast and I live on the West Coast. All that aside, 410 is very capable for defensive tasks and for anything deer size and down. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, what about the combination gun? What about the combination gun? I'm just not a big fan of the combination guns because, as far as I know, all the shotgun over 22, the most common one is like a 410 over 22 for a big reason. Those are both really good survival options, so you'll see a lot of those survival combo guns in that. But I don't get a reasonable rate of fire. I get 2 shots. I'm not a big fan of that. It's just if I get in a defensive encounter, I don't want 1 shot of shotgun and then 122 round. So I look at survival as twofold. Eating, number 1, but also very important is defense. And although I'd rather have 1 round of 410 and 1 round of 22 than a sharp stick, I don't think it has a good enough rate of fire to be considered. So if you want to choose that for you, that's fine, but I would not recommend it as even in my top 20 of go-to survival firearms. I do really like them. I do think they're cool. I don't own one, but I think it would be really cool to have one. Again, I live semi-nomadically, if you don't know, and I'm a gunfighter, not a gun collector, but I do think it would be really cool to have. I believe the Russians made for a while like a 7.62 by 39 over like a 20 gauge or a 12 gauge. That would be really cool. Also like a 30-30 over, 12 gauge or 20 gauge would be a really cool combination. A 243 over a 20 gauge. That would be a fantastic combo. But again, I only get 2 shots. I think for all around hunting, fantastic. If we're talking about that's the only gun I have in a really, really bad time, the opportunity to have to face multiple opponents or fend off multiple opponents, that's a real thing. This is gunfighter life. And I don't want a combo gun, 410 over 22. That's just not what I want. I would much rather have any of these other guns we talked about today in a repeating capacity. I'd rather have a Leveraction 22 Hornet in that scenario. And I know at least one of the patrons is probably getting worked up because I have not mentioned his favorite go-to firearm. So I will talk about that now in conclusion. And this is not in descending order. This is a really good option. That's why I saved it for last. The Scout Rifle. The Scout Rifle is kind of designed to be a go-to, do-it-all kind of rifle. The Scout. Like forward military observer, skirmishing, also hunting and providing his own food. The Scout Rifle. Now, the classic Scout Rifle is designed to be a light, handy, not specifically, but generally thought of as bolt-action rifle. Usually in .308, but a lot of other calibers can be considered. The quintessential Scout Rifle has a forward-mounted optic for quick target acquisition to be shot with both eyes open. Obviously good for tactical scenarios. I think the Scout Rifle is a fantastic choice. We did the very first episode of Gunfighter Life was on Scout Rifles, episode numero uno. If you want to go back and check that out, you can. We did a whole episode on that. But it is a fantastic choice. I would say the Scout Rifle and what I would call the light Scout Rifle. I know they have, and I believe still do, make the Scout Rifle concept in .223. In a scenario like this where you may be carrying ammo for the same reason the military went to it, you may want to consider the 223 for this. I wouldn't. I think I'd still stick with the 308 or the 6.5 Creedmoor if it were me, because I have to manually operate the gun anyway. So things like double taps really aren't a thing. If I'm going to be manually operating that gun, my all-around gun, I think the 308 or 6.5 have a lot of merit. I think the Scout rifle would be a fantastic choice in this scenario. Again, it's meant to be lightweight, fast handling, manually operated. It's meant to take down large game. It is meant to be a large game hunting rifle and defense rifle. My one issue with it is it's not great for small game, and if you've ever been a hunter for meat to put meat on the table, then you'll know that many times the small game is how you feed yourself, and 308 is much less than ideal for that. But other than the small game, if you're talking about a good balance between large game and or the most dangerous game, human beings that want to do evil upon you, the Scout rifle, again, was designed for that. Men, I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Gunfighter Life on, other options for survival firearms. If you like this content, guys, this is my secondary job. I consider my number one job to be a servant of God, a preacher, a fisher of men. But as a profession, I'm putting out podcasts. If you like this content, if you like the frequency, the degree, the quality of it, I encourage you to scroll down and click either Good Shepherd Training or the Patreon link. Go to Good Shepherd Training. There's a couple of ways to support on there. For the fraction of the cost of a box of ammo, you can become a patron, part of our Patreon chat, be part of like the inner tribe. We talk about this kind of stuff all the time, and there's a lot of guys on there with really good experience and more knowledge than me on a lot of things. If you feel kind of left out in your life right now as far as having like a tribe of like-minded men, you might find that there. For all the money you probably spend on guns and gun stuff if you listen to this podcast, because I'm going through stuff now to get this podcast growing. I'm selling stuff on eBay, like random gun stuff in duffel bags that I haven't used in years. And if you're like me, you probably have some of that stuff, and you probably order stuff on Amazon that by the time you get it, you'll forget that you even wanted it. A fraction of that, consider going and supporting on Patreon. That's all I'll say on that for today. If you don't want to do any of that, please consider scrolling down, hitting some stars. If you just want to check out some cool pictures of past hunting adventures or shooting drills or stuff like that, you can go to goodshepherdtraining.com and check that out. A thank you for staying tuned till the end of the episode. The tactical tip of the day. So, a lot of the new polymer stocks, even if they're not advertised this way, they're hollow. And I like that. One, because they're light. And two, because you can put stuff in there. Usually, the stock on the back on your rifle will have a butt pad. There'll usually be 2 screws in that butt pad. Whether it's a Remington or a Winchester or a Kimber, a lot of times they're just constructed like that. You can take that butt pad off and there's a hollow chamber in there. We talked about like go-to survival weapons today. So this is very fitting for this topic. You can put all kinds of cool stuff back here, and I generally do on my go-to. And it's just a big game hunting rifle. And I'm planning on it being a day trip. Keyword planning on. You never know. There's some things I change out gun to gun, but some things are pretty common that go back there. One being some kind of razor blade. You could do a really small knife for this if you want, but a lot of those knives with the exchangeable blades, whether they're talking about the commonly referred to like X-Acto knife blade or an actual utility razor blade, the purpose knife blades on like the Havalons or the Outdoor Edge knives, which is, if you're a big time hunter, butcher, you probably have one of those. Take a couple of those spare blades, or if you want to be really frugal, wait till one gets dull and you can resharpen those. I know they're supposed to be one-time use because they want you to buy more. They're good steel. You can resharpen those. So get an old one, resharpen it, and put it inside there. They take up almost no space. They're not heavy. If you are using a gun and you plan on hunting with it, that means that you're going to have to cut an animal open almost all the time if you take something. Now, you can butcher stuff with just your hands, But in general, you're going to want or need a knife. Those are a cheap, easy, sharp way to do that. You can make an impromptu handle really easily with just a stick if you have to. Now, you should have another knife on you, like a go-to EDC knife. I say should again. Keyword is should. We all forget stuff. I've gone hunting before and forgot to load my gun. It happens. You may have forgotten your knife that day. You may have picked up somebody along the way that's helping you in a survival scenario and they don't have a knife. And it's a lot easier to butcher an elk with 2 people working at it than 1. So anyway, it's a good idea to have a blade back there, even if it's a small one. Another real common thing, whatever caliber that gun is, put at least 1 spare round back there. You know, if it's a 308, put 1 or 2 308 rounds back there. In case you've done what I've done before and gone and hiked out and get out there and realize, oh crap, I forgot my ammo, because you can't hike out in the dark. Well, you can, but legally you're not supposed to be hunting from a road. So let's say you're walking a couple miles on a road before you get off of it. You don't want to load your gun first so you don't get a ticket from the fish and game officer or whatever, and you get all the way out there and it's about to be time to hunt and you realize you don't have any ammo. And if you walk back, you're going to waste your day of hunting. You can at least pull out the 2 rounds you have in your stock. Or the classic survival scenario, you run out of all your ammo and you at least remember, ta-da, I have an extra round in my stock. I have 1 more round. Also, a small piece of coated wire so that if you do fall, which happens in a lot of scenarios, and you get dirt in your barrel, you really don't want to shoot with the dirt in that barrel. You want to clean it out. So just a piece of coated wire that you can cut off a piece of your t-shirt or a piece of your sock and pull through there to clean it out. That's something that's really hard to improvise a lot of times. A tactical tip inside a tactical tip, if you need to do that sometimes, you can do that with an oil dipstick from your car. It even usually has little holes drilled in it so you can pull something through there. If you absolutely had to, you can use that if you're around one. But if you're in the woods, you probably don't have that. And sky's the limit. You could put a ferrocerium rod back there. You could put a couple of all-weather matches back there. You could put a little piece of fishing string with a fish hook on it back there. Like I said, your imagination is your limit there. If it's a wood stock, a lot of times they have a hole drilled into them, and that's how they attach. You can put stuff in that hole. You can also auger out or drill out that hole with a drill bit, or put in different holes, like a hole slightly bigger than a ferrocerium rod, and have another hole back there. Just don't go so crazy you compromise the integrity of a stock, but usually that's not an issue. You can put quite a few holes or a bigger hole back there to store stuff. That's your tactical tip for the day. Your tactical verse of the day. Tactical verse is coming at you from Psalm 4. But know that the Lord has set apart for himself him who is godly. The Lord will hear when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Selah. I'll reiterate part of that, and that is, know that the Lord has set apart for himself him who is godly. That's what holy means, kadosh, in the Hebrew. Be a holy one of God, kedoshim. You shall be holy, for I am holy. You shall be kedoshim, for I am kadosh. Bet you didn't think you were going to get Paleo Hebrew lessons in a survival gun episode of Gunfighter Life. But there you go. So, quick story about me that I'm not proud of. I did not grow up Christian. When I was quite a bit younger, I did what I called flirt with Christianity, which I would not advise. But I got baptized in Kuwait, waiting for the war to start in Iraq, waiting for the invasion, because we got there before we had formally declared war. We all knew we were going, but we didn't know when. And so the chaplain, or whoever he designated, dug a hole, literally in the desert, filled it with water, probably in a trash bag, and I got baptized, because I thought, maybe there's something to this. If I get shot in the face, I want to go to the right place. That's not the way to become a Christian, and I don't consider myself having been a Christian until much later in life when I actually dedicated my life to Christ. But it reminds me of that saying, there's no atheist in a foxhole. I don't apologize for using the term survival or survivalist. My life is a beautiful gift from God. But the point of my life is to serve God and grow closer to God. That is the main point, and if I'm not doing that, I really don't see a point. If you don't see the point in life, because you're missing God and your relationship with him. And no matter what you fill it with, no matter how many guns or how much money or women, nothing's ever going to fill that void that's meant to be filled by God. With that, men, if you like that, you may want to check out Simple Man Sermons. and or Alpha Male Podcast. With that, men, have a blessed day.